Today's emerging markets are tomorrow's powerhouses. According to a recent forecast from Standard Chartered, countries like Indonesia, Brazil, Turkey, and Egypt will all be moving up the economic ladder over the next few years. But before we get into future growth, let's look at where things stand today. China recently edged out the US to become the world's largest economy by GDP when adjusted for purchasing power parity. India, Japan, and Germany will round out the top 5. Let's look at how this is expected to change by the year 2030. China's GDP will continue growing. Even accounting for a natural slowdown given the economy's size, the country may still end up with an economy twice the size of the United States. Already, 5 of the 10 largest companies in the world are located in China. India will shift up into second position. Some of this growth will be fueled by rapid urbanization, as many of the world's fastest-growing cities are located in India. Indonesia's economy is expected to triple, surpassing the size of India's today. The country's capital, Jakarta, is projected to become the world's biggest megacity by 2030. With 3 countries in the top 5, Asia's slice of the global GDP pie will increase to 35%. Egypt is expected to rocket up the rankings from 21st place to 7th by 2030. The country's rapidly increasing population will play a big part in this economic growth. Germany is expected to remain in the top 10, but at the bottom of the list. While the country is likely to remain the dominant economy in Western Europe, its modest growth rate will see it fall behind more populous, rapidly developing countries in Asia. This is a trend that will likely play out across the world as the divide between the developed and the developing economies continues to close. Theoretically, a country's share of global GDP should eventually converge on their share of global population, a trend we see reflected in this forecast. By 2030, 7 of the world's 10 largest economies will be located in today's emerging markets. As this shift occurs, Western economies may need to adjust to new realities on the global economic stage. Thanks for watching. If you like these videos, continue supporting our channel by subscribing. It helps us reach more people so we can cover even more topics that you're interested in.
Emerging markets. The 10 big emerging markets. BEM. Economies are alphabetically ordered. Argentina, Brazil, China, India, Indonesia, Mexico, Poland, South Africa, South Korea and Turkey. Egypt, Iran, Nigeria, Pakistan, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Taiwan, and Thailand are other major emerging markets. Why are emerging markets important? The label of an emerging market applies less and less by the day as its influence grows. Crucially, emerging markets will help the global economy to grow. Robust growth and development can eventually lead to developing economies overtaking those which are considered to be more advanced. What defines an emerging market? An emerging market economy is the economy of a developing nation that is becoming more engaged with global markets as it grows. Critically, an emerging market economy is transitioning from a low-income, less developed, often pre-industrial economy towards a modern, industrial economy with a higher standard of living. Are emerging markets a good investment? When basic caution is exercised, the rewards of investing in an emerging market can outweigh the risks. Despite their volatility, the most growth and the highest returning stocks are going to be found in the fastest growing economies. Why do emerging markets grow faster? Emerging economies are expected to grow faster than developed economies, at 4.8% in 2020 versus 3.6% for the developed nations' counterparts, according to April 2019 IMF estimates. As an investor, this is important because corporate revenues have the potential to grow faster when economic growth is higher. Why is China considered emerging market? Understanding emerging market economies. Both China and Tunisia belong to this category because they embarked on economic development and reform programs and have begun to open up their markets and emerge onto the global scene. EMs are considered to be fast-growing economies. Why is Russia a newly emerging economy? Russia has rich agricultural soil and is a net exporter of grain and timber. Russia can sustain its own people, and it can provide food and materials to other nations. The growth in India and China creates demand for Russia's resources. Overview of the Russian economy. Russia is part of a group of 5 emerging markets known as the BRICS, the others being Brazil, India, China and South Africa. Russian GDP has experienced steady growth since 1998. In 2018, it increased by 1.8%, thanks to solid international growth and rising oil prices. Why India is an emerging market. The Republic of India is considered one of the emerging superpowers of the world. This potential is attributed to several indicators, the primary ones being its demographic trends and a rapidly expanding economy. In 2015, India became the world's fastest growing economy with a 7.5% estimated GDP rate, mid-year terms. Among all the emerging markets, it is India's robust growth in manufacturing, business-friendly reforms, infrastructural development and political stability that makes the country the most prominent emerging market to invest in for investors. Are emerging market bonds a good investment? Bonds tend to be more highly correlated with equities than with US Treasuries. That's not quite as high a correlation as high-yield bonds, but it's still significant. Emerging market bonds can offer similar returns to high-yield debt, but with lower correlations to US equities. What asset class is emerging markets? An emerging market fund is a type of mutual fund or ETF which invests heavily in securities of varying asset classes, stocks, bonds, and other securities, from developing or emerging market economies. The most common places where these funds invest in include India, China, Russia, and Brazil. What are the three major markets that exist in all foreign markets? The three major markets. Portfolio. When a corporation is researching entry into a foreign market, there are three major markets they must examine: 1. The consumer market, 2. The industrial market, and 3. The government market. Why are emerging markets important to a global company's success? Emerging markets give companies of all sizes unmatched opportunities to grow their revenue. And most important to your bottom line, by tapping into such fertile territory, you will grow your revenue by capturing market share in these growing economies. How do you succeed in emerging markets? 5 steps to success in emerging markets. 1. Get accustomed to scarcity. 2. Keep up to date on communication technology. 3. Develop new managerial and leadership competencies. 4. Seek a collaborative solution. 5. Let go of certainties. Why is Turkey an emerging economy? Considered an emerging market for the past several decades, Turkey has poised itself to become an emerging power. A growing economy, rising military influence, active diplomacy, and a strengthened national identity has contributed greatly to this new, exciting change. The leading emerging market economies will lead the list of top 10 economies in the world by 2030, with Turkey ranking 5th. The tremendous change in the list will likely be fueled by a growing young population and expanding middle class in these economies. Why is Indonesia an emerging market? Not only is Indonesia becoming an attractive market for investors due to the growing middle class, growing political, economic openness, and potential business relations with the large, emerging markets of the Middle East, it is also an attractive market for providers of material handling and supply chain solutions. Why is Brazil an emerging market? Overview of the Brazilian economy. Brazil is the largest economy in South America and ranked 8th largest in the world by gross domestic product (GDP). However, it is classed as an emerging market, because it is still transitioning from developing to developed status. Thank you very much for watching. Dear friends, this video is our 199th work. We will be glad if you subscribe to our channel. Your questions and comments. I would be glad if you watch and like the videos.